If your breathwork only works during a session, it's not really working. And I don't mean that as a judgment. I mean that as a standard, because a peak experience is not the same as transformation. A big release is not the same as integration. If you're the kind of person who has done a lot of work on yourself, whether it's coaching, therapy, meditation, or somatics, this can be one of the most confusing things, because you know what would help you, but when life gets challenging, you can't access it. You disconnect, you get hijacked, you abandon yourself, and you only realize it afterwards. So the focus should change. Not did I have an intense session, but does this actually change my daily life? If you're listening and thinking, this is what I've been missing, I don't want another technique, I want something that actually carries over into real life, download my free program overview in the description. It shows you what we actually train, how we develop integration step by step, so you can stop chasing intensity and start measuring what actually matters. All right, let me share a student experience. One of my students shared with me something important. She said the most impactful part wasn't a huge cathartic session. It was the structure, some theory, then practice, the daily tracking, because it helped her to observe herself throughout the days, not just during the practice, but in daily life. And she started noticing something subtle but essential. A habit of always being on, always slightly active, always in a subtle fight mode, even when nothing looks stressful on the outside. And that is exactly the thing. Breath isn't the destination. Breath is the doorway into awareness, so you can stay connected to yourself when life gets challenging. There's a myth that needs to be dismantled, because most people think that breathwork fails because they're inconsistent, or because they haven't found the right method, or because they need more discipline. But for people who are already reflective, growth-oriented, and educated, knowledge is almost never the issue. It's about having access. See, you can understand everything intellectually, you can even explain your patterns beautifully, and then pressure builds, and suddenly it's like something closes off. Your attention narrows, your body braces, your breath changes, you go into your head, you push or you shut down, and then afterwards you think, why didn't I do the thing I know would help? That's what breath integration is built around. People don't struggle because they lack the tools. People struggle because they lose access to themselves when life gets challenging. So here's the first shift. Breathwork is working when it strengthens your ability to remain connected. It's not about never getting triggered, being calm all the time, or fixing yourself. It's about staying connected and about coming back to yourself sooner. The goal isn't to never leave yourself. The goal is to notice when you're leaving and then reconnecting more gently. Reconnection matters more than perfection. Now here's where the breath becomes really powerful. Not because it's a trendy wellness tool or a nervous system hack, but because the breath occupies a unique place in the human experience. It's always present, always changing, immediately accessible, and it reflects your internal state instantly. No matter how composed you are or how self-aware you are, your breath will tell the truth. It shows effort, it shows strain, it shows fear, or it shows bracing. It shows whether you're avoiding or whether you're present. So the breath becomes the perfect tool to cultivate awareness, not awareness as a concept, but awareness as an embodied experience. And this is where people miss the point of breath work. They treat the breath like a lever. I pull this lever, I get calm. I do this method, I get relief. Now, sometimes relief is supportive, but if relief is the only goal, then breathwork becomes a way to avoid. And if breathwork is an escape, it trains our nervous system to do something very specific. When discomfort shows up, disconnect. That is the opposite of integration. Breath integration offers a different approach. First, the breath informs, then it transforms us. Meaning first the breath becomes information, a mirror, a teacher, and transformation happens through awareness, not by force. So instead of asking what technique should I use, you start asking what am I noticing right now? Imagine what that would feel like to not need the perfect session because you can remain connected in the midst of daily life. If you're listening and something in you is going, oh, I've been chasing intensity and calling it transformation, you're not the only one. And you don't need more breathwork content. You need a process that helps you stay connected with yourself when life gets challenging. That's exactly why I created the free program overview. It shows you the exact path from foundation to recalibration to expansion and integration, so you can see how this becomes an embodied skill rather than just a temporary reset. Download it below and take your time to read it. Now let's bring this into daily life in a way that's actually aligned with this work. Not a long list of breathing techniques, but a way to recognize what's happening so that you can actually stay connected. Here are 3 different perspectives. The first one, stop treating the breath like a technique and start treating it like a relationship. A technique is something you do to get a specific result, but a relationship is something you return to again and again without demanding it feels a certain way. So if your breath is tight, you don't judge that as wrong. If your system is dysregulated, you don't treat that like proof that you failed. You notice, you observe, and you stay curious, because curiosity keeps you connected. Judgment makes you disconnect. What would it be like to notice I'm bracing, and instead of spiraling into self-criticism, you stay present with your breath? Not to fix it, just to not abandon yourself. The second perspective, measure your progress by reconnecting sooner, not by staying regulated. This is very important, because if your standard is I should be calm, you'll always feel like you're failing, because life is not designed to keep you calm. So what progress looks like is I notice sooner, I can observe, I come back to myself, and I trust what I notice. That's why my student's breakthrough is important, because she didn't say I had the most intense sessions. She said the daily attention helped her to observe herself throughout the week. That's integration. Another student shared something that says it perfectly because it's so simple. She said one of the biggest things was simply learning where to place her tongue, and that it became an anchor. She'd remember it several times a day, and every time she remembered it, she remembered her breath. That's not a peak experience. That is a new relationship to awareness showing up repeatedly in your daily life. That's what actually changes your daily experience. The third perspective, build capacity through challenge without forcing overwhelm. This is where people tend to polarize. Either they go very hard, intensity, forcing, pushing through, or they avoid challenge altogether. But breath integration is neither. It's not forcing, it's not avoiding, it's gradually expanding the range of your capacity. So instead of asking how intense can I make this, you ask how connected can I stay while it's slightly uncomfortable. That is the training that actually carries over. Because life doesn't ask you for a perfect session. Life asks, can you stay connected when the body tightens? Can you notice it earlier? Can you reconnect more gently? Can you trust yourself again? And if you can, that's not just a skill, that's a different relationship with yourself. And that's the entire point. So yes, peak experiences can be beautiful, but here's the question, does it actually change your daily experience? Do you recognize yourself sooner? Do you reconnect more gently? Do you stay connected more often? Do you trust yourself more? That's what growth actually looks like. If you've already tried the things that are supposed to help, but you still find yourself thinking, why do I lose myself when it matters? You don't need more intensity. You don't need another technique. You don't need another breakthrough. You need a practice that actually carries over into daily life. And you need a way to stay with yourself so that self-connection becomes your baseline. If you want to see what that process actually looks like, then download the free program overview below. Read it carefully. This is not about fixing yourself. It's about coming back to yourself again and again until that becomes natural and embodied.